Most of the time, deaf children or deaf or hard of hearing children are born to hearing parents. So they don't know how are they going to learn. And it's difficult to get into and be a part of a culture if they weren't born into it or it wasn't a part of their natural everyday life.
You're listening to episode 113 of the Mom Talks with Christa podcast. Thanks for joining me this week, guys. I am so excited to be back. I know I missed you guys so much last week. I cannot believe it is a new year. So happy new year, everyone. And thanks for joining me. I hope you guys had a great new year celebrating with your family and friends, or maybe it was just going to bed early and getting a good night's sleep. And that was the best way for you to start the new year. We all have our own things of what we look forward to. I mean, I truly cannot believe, first of all, that it's 2023. I've got a lot of exciting things going on this year for myself and my family. Our baby will be born in just a couple months, which still sounds so weird to say out loud. I truly can't believe it, but I'm so excited. But I also feel like I have so much left to do, but that's just my like planner mindset where I'm just like always thinking ahead of like the next thing. I know I was kind of talking about it the last time, but that was I think 2 weeks ago now. So much happens in every week. You know, our nursery is almost all set up. We have our shower coming up in a couple weeks. And so after the shower, I hope to like finalize everything, get every little other detail kind of like set up. And then I'm also working on that labor and delivery course with Mommy Labor Nurse. And it's been awesome. I know I was kind of talking about it last time. This is in no way sponsored by it. She is just one of my favorite follows of all time, even way before being pregnant and just being in this industry. I've always followed her page and just learned so much from her. So if you or someone you know is currently pregnant or wants to know more about it or wants to just be more informed, more educated, definitely check out Mommy Labor Nurse. Yeah, it's amazing. She offers so many great insights and free resources as well. So, if you don't want to pay for something right now, there's free resources. I just love it. I'm also trying my best to stay active. I do have a Peloton, so I'll try to get on there from time to time. It's so cold out that I haven't been outside for walks a lot, but at least if I get on the Peloton, that's something for me to just stay active or walk around our house a little bit. That can always help. But I definitely notice a decrease in energy from second to third trimester almost instantly. So I'm like, is it placebo? But yeah, almost instantly once like week 29 hit kind of, I was noticing a decrease in my energy levels. So I'm trying my best to listen to my body. If I feel really tired, I will let myself rest and then I'll kind of come back to whatever I was working on just because don't want to overdo it. I got to listen to my body just as you need to listen to your body, pregnant or not. Listen to your body. Last week, I had my glucose test, and they also found that I was slightly anemic. So I'm taking an iron pill now. So that should also hopefully help with the energy levels. So those are kind of the updates that are going on. There's so many little things. We planned also a little mini baby moon for my husband and I. So we're going to be doing that next week. A lot of exciting things. And I missed you guys last week. Since we did not have an episode last week, I wanted to share something that I do in my Facebook group every year to get us started on the right foot and doing some reflection. Whether or not you're into resolutions for the year, I really think this can be beneficial. And if you are into resolutions, do that too. I mean, I personally don't think you need a new year to have resolutions. I think anytime you're like, you know what? I need to change. I'm in a rut. I'm sick of something. Something needs to change. Make resolutions, make a list, whatever you want to change or work on. However, sometimes the new year makes it easier for people to make those resolutions because it's like, okay, leaving everything behind me in 2022 that I don't like and only taking the things I do like. And I think it's this idea that we can kind of refresh ourselves and start over. And so if that's your mindset, let's do it and let's take advantage of it. But again, whether you're into resolutions or not, I think this is going to be a great exercise for you. Okay, so it comes in two parts. So the first part, and I want you guys to really think about this. You don't have to have an answer right away or write it down right away. Just think about it. You could write down the question if you want to have it in your phone and think about what makes sense for you. Okay, so the first thing is, what are you leaving in 2022? For example, this could be insecurities, mom guilt, mom shaming, comparison, stress. And it's not saying, we're never going to deal with these things again. It's getting at that mindset of what's something that we want to change, what's something that we want to improve on, what's something we're aware of that we're like, I compare myself a lot to other people. I'm going to put that down. Or I feel guilty a lot for doing things for myself. I'm going to put that down because I want to spend more time loving myself this year. Something like that. So, number one, what's one thing that you want to leave in 2022? And then part two is, what is a focus you have for 2023? Focus or a goal. It can be a word you're thinking of for 2023. So some examples here would be self-love, happiness, a passion, love, encouragement, strength, whatever that looks like for you, then write that down. So they don't necessarily have to be opposites. They can work with each other, but they don't have to be completely opposite. Something that always helps me is kind of doing my own little self-reflection of the year and saying like, okay, where did I struggle this year? What were my high points? What were my low points? And then kind of look at those low points and see what the common denominator is. Like, okay, I really struggled because I wasn't finding, my passion because I was comparing myself to others all the time. Okay, maybe I'll put that down. Or I felt really guilty when I would say no to something. It was really hard to say no. So I felt really guilty. So I'm going to put down guilt. And then for focus, just think of yourself in the next year. So think of December 29th, 2023. Who do you want that person to be like? When you really think about that person, what makes that person like proud? Like the growth that they had in this last year. So I want you to think about that as you think about your focus. I think it's really important to have the self-reflection and check in with ourselves and our goals and what we want. And you might be thinking as you're writing this down, like, there's no way I can make this happen. Like, it's impossible. Well, what I always say is it's impossible when you have that attitude, right? We are sometimes our biggest roadblock and we don't even realize it. Like if we're like, comparison, oh, well, I'm always going to compare myself to others. There's no reason to write it down. That's not true. If we tell ourselves we can't do it, we'll never be able to improve on it or never be able to grow from it. So the first step is acknowledging it and writing it down and being aware of how you feel and what you want to work on or maybe change. So even if in your mind you're like, oh, this is going to be impossible, I can't do this, write it down. Asking yourself what you want to change or work on is going to be the first step in all this. As you're kind of thinking of these things, I just want you guys to really look outside yourself, really reflect, ask yourself these questions. Self-reflection comes a really long way. I think a lot of times we just go with the flow and move with the motions without really asking ourselves how we're feeling or why we're feeling a certain way. So there we go. All right, on to upcoming events. Next Peanut Pod is January 19th. Hope you guys will join me for that. We're talking about how to carve out time for yourself. This is a great one to join, especially starting off the new year. So I hope you guys can join. The link is in the show notes. You join on the Peanut app under the pods. All right, on to today's episode with Dr. Michelle Hu. She is a hard of hearing speech pathologist that works with parents to empower them after the child is diagnosed as deaf or hard of hearing. So this is a great episode. And make sure you guys join me after the episode for our MomTales of the week. We are talking about setting boundaries. So this is a good one. Hopefully powers you to set boundaries of your own. All right, guys, enjoy the episode. All right, guys, we got another awesome interview for you today. I talk with Dr. Michelle Hu, who is a hard of hearing pediatric audiologist. She works directly with families whose children have just been identified as hard of hearing or deaf. And she just came out with a course that we talk more about called My Child Has Hearing Loss, Now What? And the way she describes it is a nice little basket to hand to parents to empower them to ease some of their anxieties. She shares her experience with being hard of hearing and just gives them a little bit of peace of mind. And this was a great topic to cover. We have never talked about this before, and it's not something that you hear talked about a lot with children. And so if you are, or someone you know is currently struggling with this or has questions about it, Dr. Michelle is your go-to. So we have a great interview. We cover a lot. So check it out. Here is my interview with Dr. Michelle Hu. Enjoy. So before we get started, can you just tell everyone who you are and what you do?
My name is Michelle Hu. I've been a pediatric audiologist in San Diego, California for over 12 years now. What makes me unique is I am hard of hearing myself. I was diagnosed or identified when I was about 3 or 4 years old, fit with hearing aids soon after that, and my hearing loss was progressive. So every time I hit my head, my hearing would get worse. My hearing aids would get bigger or need to be reprogrammed. And eventually I received cochlear implants when I was in my later 20s, became an audiologist, and I just really love how much my life experiences have really optimized who I get to be for my patients and their parents, especially. I think, and I've been told, that I'm a safe space for the children to vent. I'm a role model, or at least a possibility for parents to see that everything's going to be just fine, that no matter if they choose to utilize amplification devices or not, their child can absolutely thrive and achieve whatever dreams that they come up with. I started my Instagram a couple of years ago during the pandemic. I missed my patients during maternity leave. And I was just like, how can I help? How can I reach out? Especially since my patients were growing up and having children of their own. They were asking me, Michelle, how do you wake up at night? How do you hear your baby cry? Do you wear your devices? What do you do? And I just started sharing my life hacks, started sharing my experiences. And it was eye-opening how many parents were reaching out to me, how many people in the community were reaching out to me. And I thought, you know what, I can grow something here. Perhaps I can create something that can really help and support that community, especially the parents and children.
Yeah, that's amazing because you have that added insight to be able to share your experience and help the moms or the parents coming to you. Something that's amazing that you are able to go then into this work. What was that kind of like for you, or when did you decide you wanted to go into this work? And was it always the work you're doing now, or did you kind of evolve into it?
I had my hearing dropped probably every 2 years until I was about 10 years old. And it didn't happen again until I was a senior in college. It scared me that time because you're a senior in college, you think your life is coming together, you have your major, you're, ready to go on to your job or whatever school you want to do next. And my hearing dropped. I got really nervous and stressed out. How am I going to go to law school? Will I ever hear my boyfriend say, I love you again? And my mom was sitting next to me in the waiting room while I was going to get another hearing test. And she said, Michelle, you might make a good audiologist because you can relate to what many of your patients might be going through. They can see you as somebody that they can trust and talk to. And I loved that. I love helping people. I love supporting them. I love being there for them. I love allowing them space to be exactly where they're at. And I just pivoted. Luckily, I had pre-med resocreds and a lot of anatomy and physiology to help me there. I had no background in phonetics or anything, but I did have a lot of sociology, which I think helped with understanding different populations. Became an audiologist, got my second cochlear implant during school, or my first one during school, my second one when I started working at the Children's Hospital here. And I've just loved it. I think that the most fulfilling is I get some of that community back for me as well. I used to, because of HIPAA, just keep everybody at an arm's length, with the potential, like the fear of what if I potentially become their clinician or their doctor?
Mm.
Well, once I discovered how to have graceful communication around boundaries, I let them in because I realized how much I needed that deaf and hard of hearing community. I needed to feel a part of it, receive, and to give and express, fully express with them. And I think that's potentially why I love so much being an entrepreneur now. I created a program for children to get the support and confidence and empowerment that they need so they can grow up confidently being deaf or hard of hearing, whichever way of communication they want to, signed, spoken language if they want devices. And it's an online program for parents with a handbook that gives them exercises, gives them bullet points, gives them explanations, gives them all of those tools to go on this deaf and hard of hearing journey because it's not often seen.
Mhm.
You know, being a parent is hard enough. I tell people all the time, cure for first time mom anxiety or worries is having a second kid or a third kid.
Mhm.
But and we can see from our grandmothers, our aunts, our friends, how people parent differently, but very rarely do we see others raising deaf and hard of hearing children and have a support group or a village there. So that's why I created this program. I was getting the same questions over and over again. And I thought, how can I put this all in a basket and just hand it to a parent when their child gets identified? And that's how I came up with the program. I share personal experiences. I interview my mom. I interview many different hearing healthcare related professionals. So if somebody didn't know what a speech language pathologist was, I'm interviewing her, asking questions, what is your appointment like? How are you going to help me? What is it going to look like if we do services with you? I interview a deaf mom of a deaf child. I interview a hearing mom of a deaf child, my pediatric audiologist. I interview a marriage family therapist so that they can start to think, oh, wow, how could this work into my life or my child's life? Because at the end of the day, it's your family, it's your child, and whatever outcome that you want, that's yours. Who am I to say that you should do it this way? You should only use spoken language. You should only use sign language. It's your choice. What do you want your family to look like? And you are the one who knows your family dynamic. I have nothing to do with that.
Mm.
So it's really about empowering parents and children, helping them through the journey, helping them through school age. It's been well received. It's out there, and it really was a labor of from my heart, and it's a hug from me to them.
Yeah, I love that because you're so right about like there's all these like courses and ways to help new parents out there or things that can assist in like the newborn stage or in toddler years or so on, but you don't see a lot for deaf or hard of hearing children. It's just not as regularly put out there, I guess. And so you have such an interesting perspective on it too, because you have your own experiences. Like you said, you talk about your own experiences and putting this like in a little basket that you said you hand off to the parents so they can kind of take what they need from it and then apply it to their own family, I think is so beautiful in the way you do that, because I'm sure it's scary to kind of get that first diagnosis and be like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Or maybe they've never thought about this as a possibility before. I'm sure you bring so much ease and just a little more like understanding to what they're going through.
Yeah, I really try to acknowledge, how are you when you get that identification? How are you having gone to a few appointments? Are you confused? Are you overwhelmed?
Mm.
What do you know that's true? What do you know about your child that's true? And I have a lot of questions that kind of prompt conversations or thought processes that help them go through that versus just, being stuck in a rut of anxiety and worry. And also some parents are actually relieved. Some parents are like, yeah, I knew something was off, but everybody was telling me, oh, your child's just lazy, or they'll talk in a little bit. Don't worry about it. Trusting mama gut, your instinct is like almost above all, everything. It's such a strong intuition. They've been with you internally for 9 or 10 months, and you've seen them every step of the way. Of course, you know them better. Yes, I'm an expert or a professional in what I studied. However, how can we be together as a team versus me just telling you what to do and making you wrong if you didn't do something my way or something like that? That's not empowering at all. So I give you all of the tools, all of the ingredients to make whatever kind of recipe that you want that fits your family.
Awesome. And so what are kind of like the first signs that parents can look for, or maybe it's like you go back to like gut instinct that something might be a little bit like different that they can look for to understand if their child is deaf or hard of hearing, and what do you kind of recommend to be that kind of next step after they're like, I think something's a little bit different here?
The good thing is now in most hospitals and birthing centers, we do newborn hearing screenings. This wasn't the case 20 years ago. When I was born 39 years ago, they definitely didn't do hearing screenings in the hospitals. So the good thing is we're catching it a little bit earlier, giving the parents option of, here are all of the resources for you that are available by the state. Follow up so that we can confirm and take a look and give you resources sooner. If they somehow fall through those cracks, usually a pediatrician will catch it, or noticing, do they have a speech and language delay? Are they not progressing along those developmental milestones as they should be or appropriately? What steps, if their child is identified with being deaf or hard of hearing, is getting together with a pediatric audiologist versus one that may only see adults. Pediatric audiologists were called unicorns because we have a certain set of skills to work with children, to work with the parents. It's not just the child that we're seeing, to really be able to figure out the puzzle of a child, how they might present to us. Taking a look at the child as a whole versus they're not raising their hand for me when they're, if they hear the beep or not. What other things are coming into the picture? Which ones matter? Which ones are related? Which ones are not? And forming a team together with the school district or Office of Department of Education if the child is younger than 3, reaching out and connecting with an ENT, educational audiologist, early interventionist, speech therapist if that's needed, and potentially like a deaf mentor if family wants to bring in sign language and deaf culture. Most of the time, deaf children or deaf or hard of hearing children are born to hearing parents. So they don't know how are they going to learn. And it's difficult to get into and be a part of a culture if they weren't born into it or it wasn't a part of their natural everyday life. So I didn't have much exposure to deaf community before, but my family and I are learning sign language together. My children are hearing, but I love learning the language. I love learning about it. And I wouldn't say that I'm a fully immersed member of the deaf community at all, but I will say that I am deaf. I will say that I'm hard of hearing, whichever direction that the conversation wants to go. And I love seeing my children sign. They love, especially when their mouths are full, that they can still communicate with me with their hands. And it's just fun. So why not take a look at all of the positives, all of the silver linings of a situation that some people in society might see as, oh, poor you. Oh, it's such a bad situation, such a hard situation. I don't see it that way anymore because look what it's brought me. Look how rich and, full my life is with so many different languages, with so much knowledge. My 4-year-old looked out the car window the other day and she was like, Mama, that girl with red hair had white cochlear implants. You missed it. And I don't know if it was true or not, but I love that she sees things like that as part of her normal everyday life. Doesn't see it as, my ears are broken or not good enough. She sees my hearing devices like other people may see glasses. And I just hope that hearing devices or amplification devices would become a norm and we can shift to a more inclusive society or community that everyone sees the value of each person, no matter how they might look physically or whatever flaws they may have.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful to be able to see it. Yeah. See with that lens, because it's like you said, like so many people, especially in the hearing community, we don't see it a lot. And so when hearing parents have a child that's deaf or hard of hearing, it's like a whole new world that they have to learn the language and so many things. So to see that connection between the worlds and work together is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about your own experience of you were like 3 or 4 when you were identified as hard of hearing, and it kind of got like more intense, I guess, as you kind of got older. And so where does hearing loss come from as like a young child, or do they not always know, or is there a reason?
Probably about 50 or 60% of hearing loss that occurred before children start speaking is genetic.
Mm.
So mine was definitely genetic. Both of my parents carried a gene, and when they had kids, there was 1 in 4 chance or 25% chance that they would have Hendrix syndrome, which is the cause of my hearing loss. I also have enlarged vestibular aqueduct, so part of my cochlea, or that snail shell portion in my ear, wasn't formed all the way,
Mm.
and it's sensitive to disruptions in the fluid in the ear. It's prevalent, but it's also invisible. You have to watch for it. That's why we screen when they're born before you leave the hospital or birthing center. And maybe, I think it was 25 to 30% is environmental. So now more teens and young adults are presenting with hearing loss because everybody's wearing earbuds or Apple, headphones, music. And we need to be careful. It's something that if you can't see or read something right in front of you, you're like, oh, I should go to an eye doctor and check this out.
Mm.
If you don't hear something, it's not hanging in midair for you to catch it again. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't know if you missed it or not. Or somebody else might not know if you heard them or not. Because
Mm-hmm.
without confirming, hey, did you hear me? Yes, heard. Nobody does that in regular conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's out there. Much of it is genetic, and a significant amount is totally caused by environmental factors. So we just need to be careful. We need to practice good listening, or good hearing protection measures. So concerts, shooting, hunting, music listening, we just need to be careful about it. And when you look at our world now versus say 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, the world is so noisy. We've
Mm-hmm.
got so much transportation noise, equipment, technology, all of this stuff that's just going on around us. We need to protect our senses that we have. And it's just hard because it is invisible. And you don't notice it until it's far beyond gone, and you can't just replace it. You can't, even though I have a cochlear implant, it's a surgery. I still take my devices off at night, and I don't hear anything. I would feel a fire truck before hearing it without my devices on. So I need to figure out other different ways to go about my life in a hearing world.
Interesting. Yeah, I even noticed like on the Apple Watch now, there's like a hearing, like I don't know if it's like a noise indicator or something. And I had it like on one day, and even like in the restroom using those like high, I don't know
And
what you call them. Yeah, it was like super high noise. And like it's something that is just so regular that you don't even realize, like, wow, this is maybe like too loud.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
things
those
like
hand
that.
fryers, blenders in the kitchen, all of that.
Mhm.
It's very, very loud, and we didn't have that 50 years ago, 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's true. We always think about like protecting our eyes from the sun, or, if we have germs or like we're sick, protecting our mouths and our nose. But you don't think a lot about protecting your ears from environment or things like that. So that's a great point.
Mm. And just trying to make it normal routine, like sunscreen for years. I was like, no, I want a tan. I want a tan. And my mom's like,
Mhm.
that's good. But nobody listens to their mom when they're younger, right? Then we
Yep.
become moms and we're like, oh, she had a point. And now I'm going to try to do it to my kids. How am I going to get my kids to do it too when I didn't want to do it myself?
Yeah, it's like that
Lessons
cycle.
learned.
I thought this would be kind of like a fun question because we talk about like a lot of people don't know about the hard of hearing or deaf community or what's going on in it. So what technology in your field makes you like most excited that's maybe coming out or just even something that maybe we just might not know about? I mean, I think it's just one of those things where it's not talked about as much. So
Me personally, I do love cochlear implant technology. It's not for everyone. It's something that has worked very well for me. And it's definitely a choice, not something that every deaf person should or can have, but it's given me access to two different worlds. Without my cochlear implants, I said, I don't hear anything. A fire truck could go off right next to me and I would feel it before I heard it. But when I put them on, when I utilize them, I can hear the clock ticking. I can hear my dog's nails on the floor. I can have those parts of auditory and verbal conversation that add to my life. And I get to go into my own little world when I take them off.
mm,
When I need a breather, when I know that my first daughter needs something, my second daughter is hurt, and my baby's crying just because I'm not touching him, I can just have like 1 second of like, okay, I just need a breath. I need to get rid of some of this anxiety, and I'm just going to go do this, and then I'm going to do that and this. So the technology is there, and it's not a cure. So why not just sit with this is where I'm at? It's almost like a gray area because sometimes I'm not deaf enough to be a part of that community.
mm,
I live in a hearing community, but I still can't hear as well as somebody else might. Or sometimes I have difficulty with sarcasm or changes in tone of voice or understanding inside jokes, something like that.
mm,
So I'm in this area where I'm deaf, but I utilize devices, so I'm still oral. And as I was growing up, I was like, I'm the only one. I'm isolated, like I'm not one or the other. But now as an adult, and especially as a mom, I've learned to step into who I am and what I have to add to the world.
mm,
And I think it's because of technology, hearing technology. It's a new population that gets to say, hi, we're here. It's
mhm.
not black or white. We are also existing. And here we are. Let's be contributors to the world, to the community.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that because I feel like so much in our society, we want to label everything.
Mhm.
And, like, okay, they're this, they're this, they're this. And so just to be able to like own that and be like, you know what? I fit in here and I also kind of fit in here. And it seems like the cochlear is kind of like letting you be a part where you want to be a part. And that's amazing technology. I know I first heard of it when there was actually someone on The Bachelor that was hard of
Mhm.
hearing.
Abigail, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought that was so cool because it was the first time they had represented someone of the hard of hearing community. I'm like, we need more representation like this. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was like my first time even hearing what it was because,
And it's a range. A lot of people don't understand that being deaf or hard of hearing can mean a little bit mild, moderate, profound, and it's
Mhm.
a range. So it's not, oh, you're deaf, you automatically know sign language, or oh, you're deaf, you automatically cannot hear me at all. You only read lips. Not every deaf person knows how to read lips. Not every
Mhm.
deaf person wants to or can use amplification. So it really is, hi, who are you? What do you like? What's your story? Do you want to share? And that's inclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like my dad has been a drummer since he was like 4 years old, and it wasn't until I'm trying to think of how long he's had hearing aids for now. Maybe like close to 10 years, maybe just under, because as he got older, he just kept getting harder and harder to hear everyday conversation, like people like standing near him. So, and that was one thing that's like really helped him a lot, is being able to now communicate, not feeling like he's always like turning his head and missing parts of conversations or something. So that's kind of led into like his story, and everyone kind of has their kind of journey and individual part of them, I guess. So
Yeah.
what advice do you have? I'm sure you give so much advice to parents that come to you, because I'm sure when they first come to you, they're maybe like just feeling like at a loss, like they're just very confused, have a lot of questions. So what's your biggest advice for parents of deaf or hard of hearing children that first come to you?
I tell this to my students when they meet a patient that's nervous, and it's meet them where they're at. Meet the child. Maybe they're on the spectrum. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they had a bad morning. Okay, acknowledge where they're at. And then once that person or child feels seen and heard, can you move on? Because otherwise it's going to be stuck with them. And this applies to parents. It applies to other clinicians. It applies literally everywhere in your life, including with you. So as a parent, meet yourself where you're at. Have some grace. Are you overwhelmed because I'm a military spouse? Are you overwhelmed because you're solo parenting and you've been solo parenting for months now and you're still not, you still haven't created a routine? Or is it day one? Okay. Be okay with that. It'll take some time for you to get used to things, or be okay that you feel like you have no idea what to do. Your child just got identified. I'd be overwhelmed too. I know life as a first-time mom, or now I'm a third-time mom, is overwhelming. And I have a few tools under my belt now, 4 years later, but there are still going to be challenges, new situations that I'm going to feel flustered in. We do not have to be super moms or super dads. We don't have to be. We honestly, we already are in our children's eyes, so meet yourself where you're at and get or build a community or a village around you so that you have a team, so that you feel supported, so that you can call someone and say, I am just so tired, I can't make dinner. Got it. Someone, bring something over or order some Grubhub food online to support you, because it's just one moment in a million moments in a day. And, the years go by so fast, but each day is so slow because there's so many different things going on, especially when you're a caretaker. Try taking care of yourself first before others so that you can serve more, and meet yourself where you're at. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. So have some grace.
Love that. Amazing advice. And I know you're kind of talking about your course a little bit before, but tell us, like, what's it called? Where can parents get it and all that good stuff?
Yeah, here's the workbook that comes with it. The program is called My Child Has Hearing Loss, Now What? Is mostly targeted for parents of children who've been identified. It does not have to be when they're babies. It follows the journey from identification all the way up through high school, what to do when they get to school, how to talk to your educational audiologist, what to do in an IEP meeting. That's the second half. The first half is, what's an audiologist? How are you doing with the processing of the identification or diagnosis? Who do you want on your team? Do you want an ENT, a speech language pathologist? How about a family therapist? And I created it for the children, for the parents to complete. There's 8 modules online, 13 bonus interviews. This booklet is 125 pages. So it has exercises, it has forms for you to fill out as you go along through your appointments, as well as explanations of what people do, who they are, what you might need. Famous deaf and hard of hearing people, so that you can look it up and follow them. And then the last few pages are just hundreds of resources that you can find on almost any topic that relates to being deaf or hard of hearing. You can find it on my website, mamawhohears.com, as well as on my Instagram. You can reach out to me. I'm open to answering questions via DMs, or just take a look at all of my posts and reels, because there's so many snippets of things that can help you along the way. And my program is not necessarily meant to be start to finish. Bounce around. Where are you at in your journey? Everybody's journey is unique and different, and it's there to support you, really.
I love that. I love the work you do. I think it's so important because, like we were kind of saying earlier, like you just put it together with your own experience and like the knowledge and experts, side too. And I'm sure it just gives so much ease to parents to know that they're not alone in this and that there is support out there and resources. So that's amazing. So I always like to end these with fun thinking question. So if you could have a billboard made today where you could share one tip with moms everywhere, what would you have it say?
This keeps coming up for me. We play a game called High Low Buffalo at dinner time. And high is, what was your high today? What was your low, or maybe a sad point? And then what was your buffalo? So I would just say, what was your buffalo? To get moms to stop, take a breath, and acknowledge something silly or unexpected in their day, instead of, I need to make it to nap time, or I need to make it to dinner time. What was your buffalo?
I love that. That's awesome. And one more time for everyone, where can they follow you and get all your awesome content?
I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is mama.hu.hears. So Mama Who Hears. And I have a website as well, and on Facebook. So check it out. I am happy to meet you, and reach out. Please send me a message.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome talking with you. And like I said, I love the work you do. I think it's amazing to bring this to light and talk more about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christa, for having me.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Michelle, who I know I learned a lot, and I think it's just such a great episode. We've never covered a topic like that before. So if you know someone that has a child that's deaf or hard of hearing, please share it with them. Michelle is a great resource. She's so much knowledge in the area. So I really enjoyed talking with her. All right, guys, on to today's Mom Tales of the Week. Tell us a time you had to learn to set a new boundary as a new mom. This is so key. And even reading these, I was like, oh, okay, these are good. I think we need to remind ourselves that we are the gatekeeper. We are allowed to have boundaries for ourselves and our children, and teach them what respectful boundaries are as well. And so if you have struggled with setting boundaries, maybe this will give you a little empowerment. I think it's really important that we listen to ourselves and listen to our children on what boundaries we can set. Okay, so I'm just going to read a few here, all anonymous. This person says, when my son was just born, I waited till he was at least a month old to have visitors. I think this is amazing. This is amazing. This is hard, but amazing. You have to listen to what makes sense for you and what you want to do as a family, because you're going to get people that are going to want to show up at your house a few days after the baby's born. And so I think it's really important to set with your partner ahead of time, like, okay, what are we going to allow? What do we want? What don't we want? What visiting hours do we want? You have a right to all of that. So establishing that ahead of time. And even when your kids are older, if you don't want someone just showing up at your house, or you have certain boundaries for certain days of the week, make sure you think about those ahead of time. Okay, this one says, when my mother-in-law tried to give my baby pork butter beans around 6 months because she said he wasn't getting enough from my breast milk. He's 11 months now and still breastfeeding, eats fruits, veggies, and protein with baby-led weaning. He is thriving. Wow. That is an amazing boundary to have, because no one should be feeding your child, especially a new, like a little baby, food that you have not introduced yet or do not want them to have quite yet. So that's amazing, being able to set that boundary. And this next one says, I didn't let anyone other than grandparents come to see my son until he was 3 to 4 months old. And I didn't let people hold him until 9 months old. Another boundary with new babies. Again, you got to listen to your gut or what makes sense for you. I also recommend having a list. Like my husband and I have like a list of like who are approved visitors within the first, month. And then after that, we have, other people that can, come by and stuff. But I think it's really important, again, to discuss this with your partner ahead of time so you guys are on the same page so that there's not people kind of sneaking around one side or the other to get what they want. And here is this last one. When I was forced to go to Thanksgiving and had to tell everybody not to touch my baby and got yelled at for my boundaries. Oh no. That's hard when people don't respect your boundaries. That's really tough. Because, we're taught, different generations are taught different things for sure. And I think if we're taught, just let people hold your baby, they just want to help. But if you do not feel comfortable with it, you have to set those boundaries. And so it's really tough then when you do set the boundaries and people do not stick to it. So I'm really sorry that happened, and hopefully they respect you more in the future. Or you just have to limit your time with those people. All right, guys, that's all I have for this week. I want you to think about boundaries that you have set or maybe need to set in this new year. Maybe you feel like you've been disrespected before. Maybe you feel like when you do set boundaries, they're crossed a lot of times. So sit down with your partner, if you have one, and talk about boundaries that you want to set for yourself, for your children. And I think that's a great place to start. Even if you're like, I don't know how I'm going to set these boundaries right now, write it down. Because that's, again, that self-reflection thing of being like in tune with what rings true for you and what deep in your core makes sense for you. All right, guys, that's all I've got this week. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again next week for another episode of Mom Talks with Christa. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified of future episodes. We release new episodes every single Wednesday. See you next week.